I'm Chris with P2T Canine. Welcome back to another Dog Talk. So today we're going to be covering a subject that is a request from an account that I interact with pretty frequently. Let me, should have already had this opened up and pulled up, but with that being said, it will only take a second for me to look right here. Here is the actual message from the account, and that way we can all be on the same page with the question that's being asked, and we'll go from there. Would you cover in one of your talks working the out? And he has the out in quotation marks, such as on a suit, jute, roll, or jute roll, toy, whatever. There's so much out there and so many theories. I would correct that from theory and say hypothesis. Touch on that in a little bit. From zero compulsion to frying the dog. I like your style and I'm very interested in your theory. Thank you. So, first of all, I appreciate your kind words that you like my style and you're interested in me making a video on this subject. So that's what we are here to do. As many of my videos probably go, if you're a frequent or repeat viewer at this point, you're going to see the subject matter in the title, and then this video is going to start, and it's not going to probably start or go the way that you think it's going to. So with that being said, I'm not going to waste a ton of time. I'll speak on where I got this information and how I came to these views and these training techniques as we go along, and not spend a ton of time going over that in the beginning. So the table right here in front of the camera, there's quite a variety of objects on here. Some things happened over the last couple of days, and I meant to have more items on this table for the video, but this will do. This is going to work. These are things that I grabbed right around here. So where we're going to start is probably not where you would anticipate this video would start. So our account is asking about outing, toys, decoys that are in protective equipment for biting and apprehension training, other reward items that your dog might be using, and we will get to that. And I'm also going to address problem dogs and dogs that may have had issues. But just like I've referenced in previous videos, you have to know how all of these little pieces come together. This is not going to be a video where you click it on and there's going to be some easy 15-minute download / debrief of this is how you go into getting a dog to out before you have to certify on your patrol cert to be able to show the certifying official that your dog knows an out and you get your piece of paper for the next 12 months. That's not what we're doing here. I'm going to give you the tools and the understanding to know this subject from front to back and how to execute on that and why. So with that being said, since I already touched on it when we were talking about doing an out off of a decoy in front of a certifying official, let's back all the way up to the beginning. So me going into canine with a law enforcement agency in 1999, you immediately start seeing things and hearing things and being exposed to all kinds of opinions and ideas. And back then, not a lot has changed in some agencies having this idea that I only work my out one time a year. As long as I can go get in front of that certifying official, my NAPWADA official, my NNDDA official, USPCA, whatever organization that you're working with to get this certification, I'm going to go in front of them one time a year. I'm going to get my out, and then that's it. I'm not going to work the out for the rest of the year because I'm a hard-ass patrol dog user on the street, and when we say stop or the dog will bite you, then that's just it. No more to discuss. The dog will bite you, and then I'm going to go over there and take this dog off. I don't need an out. I work in a particularly hard jurisdiction. I've got the backing of administration. I can get away with this. Okay, and maybe some of you do, and certainly agencies did back then. Let me go ahead and throw in another caveat here. This is my first video addressing outing or taking objects back from a dog. And I know not everyone is interested in watching every single video that I do, and that's understandable. But if you are a hardcore viewer / listener, you are going to recognize that I have already touched on many of these concepts in other videos, but I am going to be sweeping all of that into a pile, the pieces and parts that are relevant and necessary to talk about this outing video. What does it mean, and how do we train it, and how should we look at it going into it? So I'm going to be pulling concepts from Things Every Dog Owner Should Know Part 1. I'm going to be looking at e-collar past and present techniques. I'm going to be pulling a little bit from the last 2-part series on CQB integration. I'm sure I'll think of other parts and pieces in videos that are already out there, but this is going to be all in one spot for you. So with that being said, some of this is going to be recycled in small part, but it's going to again show you how all of these little minor pieces of information all have these tendrils that run throughout different subjects and how they're all interrelated. So with that being said, there were agencies that talked about that and got away with it. If we go back and revisit a concept from This Police Dog Training Should Stop Now, where I look at the reattack bite and I discussed how prevalent cameras are now. They're ubiquitous. The number of people who have a smartphone with a high-def camera that can shoot video, when we talk about doorbell cameras, Ring system cameras, all these other forms of video and audio surveillance that are no longer cost prohibitive. From 1999, I questioned people who said that and thought that of, well, I don't really need an out. And then we go all the way to current day 2024, late 2024, and you still, I do training with agencies of all different varieties, from municipalities all the way to federal, and there are still handlers and agencies out there trotting that out. We certify 1 time a year. We don't need an out. We don't work an out until the week of cert, the day of cert, 5 minutes before the cert. We go out behind the building and we burn the dog down with an e-collar and get him tuned up and dialed in, and then we step out here and we get our cert done, and then we don't readdress it for the next 11 months and 29 days. So even now, 25 years forward from when I started this, that's an even worse outlook, because now you have that video and audio surveillance everywhere. And I did another video about bite work concepts, and I featured a video of a guy in a real world street engagement with a fella on his cell phone saying, "Hey bro, why can't you out your dog? Why can't you get your dog off that guy?" And the handler is having significant trouble trying to use the collar to out the dog, to get the dog to be compliant and come off of this guy. And it was a horrible look. So with that being said, that attitude is even worse now than it was 25 years ago in 1999. I just don't think you can afford, in the last 25 years, we've become more litigious. In the last 25 years, law enforcement agencies have become the target of more and more lawsuits. The courts that are the mediators in these subjects have become less protective of law enforcement agencies. The aspects of qualified immunity for actions that a law enforcement officer takes or an agency condones, all of these things are getting thinner and thinner. So to have the cavalier attitude of, I don't need an out and we're hardcore patrol ass kickers, I really think you need to reevaluate that. So during that 25-year arc, pepper in there the global war on terror, which I have referenced in the past, both as a firsthand participant as well as being a SOF MPC trainer and picking, training, and sending dogs into combat with guys that are on a patrol role, especially during that full-on combat of the global war on terror. I really got to see firsthand the tactical value of having an honest to goodness out. If your dog is at a distance from you and the dynamics of the situation changes, if this intersection or street suddenly becomes flooded with gunfire, if you don't have an out, you only have two choices left. You're either going to put yourself in harm's way and have to run across that street and brave this hail of gunfire to try to go physically restrain your dog and get them off of this bite and bring them back, or you're going to have to just cut sling load with this dog and give them up for dead and leave your asset behind. And neither one of those are great. The problem with course of action number one is if I go across that street to go reclaim our asset to get this canine asset back, now I have obligated other team members who are out there with me to be concerned with my safety. It doesn't matter what unit you're with, whether it's a conventional force, some kind of SOF element, if it's special forces or rangers or other special operators, they are not going to let this dog handler go across the street and say, hey, I'm going to go after the dog and try to rescue him and get him off this bite and bring him back. If I get hit or go down, just leave me. Just cut sling load with both of us. Don't endanger yourself. Just let me go. Nobody's going to do that. And because of that fact, you have now obligated other team members who care about you and your safety to come out there and put themselves in harm's way to go bail you out if you do become wounded or grievously wounded or even KIA. They don't want to leave you over there. You're wearing sensitive items, body armor, communications equipment, weapon systems. They're not going to leave you out there. And don't be the guy who drags other people into harm's way because your dog won't out and come back, or you just give up your canine asset for dead because you can't out and recall that dog. So spend a little bit of time on that. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but this is what has shaped my view and what drives me in training and me in teaching this to other people is this out and recall have a real purpose. The one thing, and I've discussed this in other videos as well, one of the unique things about canine and law enforcement as a use of force is this is a use of force that you can change your mind about if you have proper control over your dog. So I can send my dog, the dog can either perhaps errantly pick up on the wrong target, things can change in the environment, traffic, other people get in the way, and you can, hey, recall your dog, or send them on somebody, hey, stop or I'm going to send my dog. They call your bluff, you send the dog, and then halfway out there, okay, I give up, I don't want this. Some people will say that's too bad. I already warned them the dog's on the way. If this guy's in a neighborhood or next to a commercial building and they have not only video surveillance, but even with these Ring doorbell cameras, if there's audio to go with that and this guy turns around and throws two hands up and says, hey, I give up, I don't want to do this, please don't bite me, I changed my mind, and this dog comes flying into the frame of the camera and shithouses this guy and puts him on the ground and chews him up, that's a loser. That is a loser. Especially if this goes to court and they pull that certification and they say, and I'll steal from Dan Bongino here, hey, Officer Joey Bag of Donuts, this says here that on this date and time you were able to recall your dog during certification and not have a bad guy bit, so that you can show the ability to stop that use of force and change your mind and not have that person get bit if the situation changes. And that's what this certification is for. Officer Joey Bag of Donuts, how come it went so poorly on this occasion? Why did this guy turn around and go 2 hands up and your dog bit them on the pec / bicep and triceps and tear this up? And as we all know who have worked patrol dogs and who do decoy work for patrol dogs, the day of is not as bad as 3 days from now. And you better believe it that if this guy has been bit within 3 to 5 days of the actual engagement, I know that you're going to take this guy to the ER and you're going to take pictures and you're going to have your documentation, but their lawyer is going to advise them and take pictures of 3 days, 5 days, and 7 days post-bite when that hemorrhaging and that bruising where a bite was just right here in the pocket is now below their elbow. And you're going to say, yeah, but I'm going to present my evidence of where day of the bite was just right here and there was a few sutures and some bite marks. And that's true. But the lawyer is going to argue, yes, members of the jury and your honor, yes, that's what the bite looked like the night of. But my client is suffering long-term side effects, long-term injuries, debilitating pain. Look at how much worse this injury got days after the fact. We're not talking about, your honor and members of the jury, what happened the night of. We're talking about long-term impacts and the quality of life, and that's where that dollar amount goes up. Nobody's going to pay out a couple of $1 million on sutures to your arm for actions on the night of. But when you start saying, well, I need $1 million or $2 million because now I've lost the long-term ability to work my job or provide for my family or have a normal life, that's where we get in trouble. So, going to get back on track, but I really want to drive home the point that that's why these things are important and that's why we should do these things. They're not just pro forma or silly or some kind of actions to go through. There's a real purpose behind all of this. So let's go back to the beginning and get started with the real meat and potatoes of this subject. You might be looking at this table right here and say, wow, that is an interesting collection of things that you have on this table. And you're correct. But all of these things have things in common that link them together for the purposes of this discussion and understanding this discussion and then the techniques moving forward. So with that being said, when I started in canine in 99, the place where I got my training and my first dog was Von Lick Kennel. And so many people know Ken Licklider. Like him, hate him, really hate him, ambivalent, whatever. There is no denying that this was one of the largest kennels that really pushed the leading edge of things for quite some time. Had a large enough operation to be a major player as a vendor during the GWOT. All of these things are true. Was in fact the GWOT vendor for SOF MPC for many, many years. All of these things are factually accurate. So you can't just blow off and dismiss that I'm referencing Von Lick Kennel for the sake of, well, maybe now the luster has worn off or they're not as good as they used to be, whatever. At this point in time, they are one of the largest leading edge kennels in the country. That's just facts. With that being said, I get my first dog and my first patrol training there, and Ken Licklider will tell you there are only 4 things that a dog cares about: food, water, sex, and air. And again, so we're going to talk about the difference between a theory and a hypothesis. People like to quote theory, and theory in the scientific process is actually the end result. When you are coming up with an idea that you want to invest some research in, that's the hypothesis. Hypothesis comes first. I'm going to hypothesize what I think will happen or what I think is the driving force here. And then through repeated series of testing, you are able to repeat the results of the test over and over and over. And now you have a theory because you had a hypothesis, you tested it, and time again in both maybe laboratory or controlled testing, and then in field trials, you keep coming up with consistent results. Now you have a theory. So, clarifying that. With that being said, Ken Licklider, Food, Water, Sex, and Air, and he talks about how we engage in the 4 of those, and I spoke on that in Things Every Dog Owner Should Know, Part 1, and why I believe those to be true, and how over 25 years of me testing, me fielding dogs in real world conditions, me using multiple dogs in real world engagements, that yes, I have been able to engage in these processes and get the good results over and over and over in a variety of conditions, which now gives these hypotheses the basis of theory and real world results from these theories. So, with that being said, Ken Licklider told me then that a live animal, which this stuffed bunny represents, that the live animal bunny and these dog toys and this cup of food, and even though this is a Carhartt jacket, I wanted to bring one of my bite suits in here and have it on display for the purposes of this video. But again, some weird things happened this week, and I didn't have the chance to grab a bite suit and bring it in here for this. But Carhartt is a good representation, so just play along with me. This is our bite suit top, representing all things protective equipment, sleeves, full suits, etc. So you may be asking me, why am I talking about this? Well, that's a valid question. So from my training for my first dog at VLK, and then my picking of dogs over the years, and as a trainer with SOF MPC, and picking dogs and training them, putting them with handlers and sending them into actual combat in the GWAT and having results from that process and repeating it, I can tell you his hypothesis, which has panned out to be a theory, is absolutely correct. All of these have a relationship. I know when you're watching this video, you may want to take everything on this side of the table and just push it off in the floor and tell me, hey Chris, get to the meat and potatoes. Tell me why when I put on this suit or this sleeve and the dog jumps on here and starts biting it, and then I tell the dog to stop biting it and let go, that everything turns into a giant goat rope and a shit show, and I'm having problems and my dog won't out and I'm super frustrated. I know this is where you want to go. You want to jump right here to the bite equipment and get straight to, how do I take my dog off of a bite? I really don't care about the relationship with the other half of this table. That's where most people go wrong. A huge basis of the problem: a lot of things can be corrected or not even experienced at all if you put this half of the table in play. If you ever had the good fortune, he quit his business and retired now. I was really upset and devastated, and I've referenced it in other videos, when Franco Angelini closed his Bite Doctor business. That was a real loss to the working dog community. I get it. I've referenced it in other videos. I will be 50 in 30 days' time. I get it now. Nobody's going to last forever at this. Nobody wants to keep getting pounded and take dog after dog after dog. But I had the good fortune of training with Franco Angelini on multiple occasions. And if you have been through Franco's class, his PowerPoint engages in part of what's on this table. He will tell you that a decoy, the decoy who is animating this protective equipment, is prey. He will tell you that these toys are prey. He will describe in detail, using his own words, how when a dog runs down a prey item, whether it's a toy or a decoy, they're going to try to capture, they're going to try to kill, they're going to vanquish the prey, and in many cases, they're going to try to consume that after the fact. This is just what is in a dog, given to them by nature and by God, that we shape this behavior to serve our purposes, but they are really acting out on things that are in them genetically as leftovers from being wild animals or descendants of wild animals, domesticated descendants of wild animals, the canid, distant cousins of the wolf and the coyote. So when you talk about how do I teach my dog to out and what is the basis of it, you have to understand this end of the table first. Then that sets you up with the tools and understanding to work this end of the table. So where do I start? And part of this was covered in how to pick a dog from a vendor. Right here is a cup of food, kibble. This is important. This isn't necessarily a prey item for a dog. It doesn't run, but will they work? Are we able to modify a dog's behavior and get them to perform tasks and useful tasks on our behalf? And we can do food reward for a dog? Absolutely. Is food reward a great way to shape the behavior of a dog? Absolutely. Let me take one half step back here as I get into the nuts and bolts of this and say, and to our requesting account who said there's a lot of stuff out there that goes all the way from fry the dog to all this hippy dippy baloney about, you know, everything can be done through a reward-based system. Let me take a real pause here and say, first of all, my outlook and my methodology on this, meet a dog wherever it is at. We talked about in the video of picking a dog from a vendor, know your training matrix, add skills to your toolbox, to your training matrix, learn things and open up your ability to train more dogs, the most dogs you can that will fit for your program or fit for your needs. And my personal philosophy on it that I teach to everyone who trains with me, meet a dog where it's at. If this dog has the drives and aptitudes to plug into your program or into your purposes, I will not shun a dog because it might benefit or train fastest from food reward. There are going to be people that, that's dumb, I don't want to food train a dog. Well, I think that's dumb. If the dog is good and can make it, and we can make the fastest progress and modify behavior quickly with food reward, I'm doing it. If it's a toy reward dog and that's what drives them the most, and I've got both that I deal with right now. I've got dogs that are absolutely just shit hot and I can teach them a new thing using food, and then I can extinct food out of it and get them on a toy, but I can teach that new skill the fastest through food. Could I get there with a toy? Yeah, I could. But I know I can get there faster with that dog through food. Why would I not do that? I've got other dogs right now that I deal with that I can go out and start trying to teach them something new, and they are completely disinterested in the food. But if I have the toy, now I have their attention. So I have to meet that dog where it's at. I can't take a dog that's not interested in food and go out there and try to make it a food reward dog. I'm going to meet them where they're at and give them what they're looking for to get the behavior modification going and get the fastest results for me that serve my purposes. So with that being said, food is not necessarily a prey item, but you can use behavior modification. They do consume it, and it does sustain the dog nutritionally so that they can survive and that they can live. Why is this little stuffed bunny rabbit out here? Well, this is supposed to represent a real life bunny rabbit or a squirrel or any other type of real life animal, a chicken perhaps, which my chickens are out and roaming around, and chickens, birds, rodents, all of these small real world prey animals that your dog may come in contact with and become stimulated by. They may want to pursue this. They may want to grab your chicken. They may want to kill your chicken. And if we're back to the Franco Angelini brief of chase the prey, capture the prey, kill the prey, vanquish the prey, and eat the prey, yeah, they can run down a chicken, grab it, kill it, tear it apart, or ultimately consume it. In some instances over the years when I've had chickens, that's one of the ways that as I put on my detective hat, if I lose a chicken and I find it, I can tell a little bit of what I'm dealing with. in the wild, your wild animals, your coyotes, things of that nature, feral dogs, they don't run down a chicken and spend the time trying to stalk it and then run it down and catch this prey item and kill it to just leave it. They are actually out there trying to secure food and nutritional sustenance. So if I lose a chicken and then I find it and the chicken is just thrashed and it's ragdolled out, but it's mostly intact and it doesn't appear to have been eaten at all, now I'm probably dealing with a domesticated dog who belongs to someone that's getting fed because the dog was stimulated by prey. That old wild instinct kicks in, they chase it, it's fun, they grab it, they kill it, maybe even tear it up a little, but they don't actually consume it. That's more of a trademark of a domesticated dog. If I go and I find a big kill site and there's a bunch of feathers and maybe a couple of wings torn apart, but the breast is out, the guts are eaten, if the majority or all of the actual food parts of this chicken are gone, now I'm looking at a wild animal, a coyote, a bobcat, something of that nature that actually ran this thing down and completed it by consuming that animal for food. So with that being said, for our domesticated dogs, even in our pet world, for our pet trainers, this is going to be a bugaboo for you because one of the things we have to work through is canine reactivity to wild animals or other domestic animals that may elicit some kind of a prey response out of your dog. So understanding that this is in play and how your dog feels about these real life animals and prey items is very important to the total understanding of this system. So what do we have right here? These are actual dog toys from dogs that I have here at the house. You might ask yourself, why is half of this chew toy missing? Why are there parts and pieces off? Here's a black Kong, something ubiquitous to dog training that everyone will quickly recognize. Why is the third smallest section of this thing gone? Why are there little bits chewed out and chunks missing out of this thing? That's a great question. That goes straight back to understanding the relationship with all of these things, and it goes back to Franco's class. The dog views this as a prey item. When I wind up and I throw it through the yard and they take off chasing it, they're chasing it because it's in motion. It has triggered a prey response. Once they run it down and they capture it, the dog wants to thrash it, shake it around. If I play tug with them and make it alive again, they'll fight with me and thrash it some more until I let go. And then once I let go, they'll give it the little death rattle and try to finish it off. And then they'll flop down on the ground, and reason that pieces are missing is they start chewing on it. When they're chewing on it, again, they're acting out this wild programming in their genetics of, okay, I saw it in motion, I ran it down, I captured it, I gave it the death shake, I've killed it. What do I do now? I start breaking it down into the usable pieces so that I can consume it for sustenance. Now, what is the problem here? That's why when you get your working dog, they'll tell you don't leave your dog unsupervised with toys. You really need to learn your dog and know your dog before you even think about that as a possibility, because you need to find out where does that wild prey drive and that domesticated proclivity of the dog kick in. What's that line of demarcation? Where does that separate? Because everyone should know in the working dog community right now about bowel obstructions. You don't want to leave this high drive, super drivey dog that doesn't have that line in the sand mentally, genetically of this is an inanimate object and it doesn't give me nutritional sustenance. So once I chew pieces off and I'm tearing down the carcass of this prey animal that I have caught but is inanimate, as I'm breaking that carcass down, do I actually consume it or do I just spit it out on the ground? And you'll have a mix of both. You'll see high drive working dogs and pets. Some of them are going to spit these bits out on the ground. Some of them are actually going to swallow them and down the hatch they go. And that's when you're making a mad dash to the vet and you're having a very expensive surgery because your dog has a bowel obstruction You may not sprint to the vet immediately. Step one of this procedure is to see half of a Kong or a tennis ball missing and then realize your dog has consumed it. First step is you're walking around with constant surveillance on your dog for about the next 12 to 24 hours, watching for them to stop having bowel movements. You are out there with a stick breaking up stool samples, finding bits and pieces of the missing toy, praying to God that your dog keeps having bowel movements and that you can eventually CSI style rebuild the majority of this toy and say, okay, whew, they broke it down into small enough pieces that it passed the entire GI tract and it's back out again, and I've accounted for all of the missing toy, and my dog is continuing to have bowel movements. I'm in the clear. Other side of that is your dog immediately or within a couple of normal routine sessions where they should be having bowel movements, they don't. Now you're off to the vet for that expensive emergency surgery because a piece of Kong or tennis ball or other toy item has turned and is obstructing the GI tract, and now the bowels are no longer moving. So that's why pieces of this are gone, because it's not enough to play with it or chew on it. They want to break the carcass down, and in some cases with an extremely prey-driven dog, they're going to break these pieces down and then consume them, because in their mind, that's actual food. So with that being said, the unique advantage, and I've spoken about this in other videos, is the neat thing is when you find that dog that is so prey-driven that they will engage in hunting tasks, searching tasks, capturing tasks, and they will do that for inanimate, whether it's a bad guy, a decoy, or whether it's these toys. They're going to act upon these wild instincts and urges in order to secure something that's not even a consumable, that doesn't even sustain them nutritionally, and then they will repeat that over and over. And I've spoken about it in other videos. What makes that dog so valuable for canine training is the fact that I can use behavior modification, teach them to do tasks. I can put this toy in my pocket, put that dog to work, Suki Shuki, sniff all around, maybe even do a track, and I can have this toy on the ground at the end of a track. I can pull this out for some kind of detection piece, and I can throw and deliver that toy. I can deliver that toy for obedience work, and the dog can catch it, play with it, maybe do some tug, and we can act out this whole natural prey process, and then I can take that away and put it back in my pocket and have them do another task or series of tasks, and they're just as happy and just as motivated to act on this whole routine again. And I pull it out and I go, hey, and a good working dog can get this thing over and over and over again in perpetuity for years at a time and be just as excited about it when it comes out the fifth time as they were when it came out the first time. And the neat thing to that is when you're a police officer, when you are a military working dog handler, you can be out in a combat environment, in a deployment environment, and you're not carrying food in your pocket. You're not worried about how much training or what interactions you have where you give this dog actual food, because now we're not impacting the diet. This, to a dog, is reusable food. This is equal to this in their mind, and it is equal to this if this was a real animal in their mind. And you can pull that out and throw it to them over and over and over again without impacting their weight or nutritional intake, and without having to use a real wild animal. They act out on these instincts for this toy item over and over. And that is the real beauty of a high drive working aptitude dog, is to be able to use these inanimate objects, which are easy to carry around and present to the dog, and then repeat over and over. Now, let's start moving into the meat of this subject. What's the difference between a food reward dog and a toy reward dog? Well, when I give them the food's a consumable. They're allowed to ingest this. I don't take it back. I present a task, they perform the task, they have a successful outcome, and now we give them the food, and hopefully we repeat this. Let me get a drink of water. So, maybe I should have started with this little piece more toward the beginning, but it's not too late. So I'm going to work it in now. Without going into a full rabbit hole sidebar discussion about conditioning, about Skinner boxes, about positive versus negative. Again, I'm going to take a seat because I'm going to need just a minute here. I've mentioned this in many of my growing catalog of videos now. We can't ask a dog what they think. We can't ask them, what does this mean to you? We have a lot of anthropomorphic definitions. We have a lot of dog trainers and self-proclaimed experts who are out there to sell a product or to trademark a system or trademark a word or try to get on the internet and say they wrote the definition or created something. That's all fine. As I have stated over and over consistently, we are dealing with a subject, dogs, that cannot speak back to us. They can only communicate with their behavior in response to stimuli that we introduce them to, and then we judge the results of that, sometimes correctly, sometimes incorrectly, and then we come up with words and explanations to convey this to other humans to try to let them know what we're doing and how we're interacting with these dogs. So, with that being said, as part of our inquiring account had written there, I can't move forward without getting us all on the same page with the language and concepts. What is the number one pitfall right now in the world in dog training, in this one man's opinion? That is people using the same words with different definitions and having huge knowledge gaps and differences and talking past each other using the exact same words. Primary offender number one, positive and negative. To most people, if I said positive or negative, unless you're an electrician, the first thing you're going to think of is positive means good and negative means bad. Simple enough. If we go back to behavior modification roots, if we go back to the beginning, one of the biggest problems that gets people talking past each other are the Skinner boxes, where they have the discussion, he has the discussion of, and he put forward the concepts of the positive correction, the negative correction, the positive reward, the negative reward. Skinner was a mathematician. Most important key piece of information to this, the man was a mathematician. When he wrote this language, he was thinking in addition and subtraction. That's what he means by positive and negative, plus signs and minus signs. I'm adding things to, I'm taking things away. Move forward, last 25 years and even more so the last 15 years, whenever someone says positive, they think that means happy, smiley, good, nice, all friendly. So, for the purposes of this discussion, without me derailing and going way down into the weeds and making this video way longer than it needs to be, we are going to stick with, for the purposes of this, I'm going to speak only, I'm not going to use positive, I'm not going to use negative, I'm not going to use it in the mathematician Skinner usage, I'm not going to use it in the modern day discussion of emotions and feels. I'm going to say corrections and rewards. That's what we're going to use. Period. End. I'm not going to talk about a positive reward or a positive correction or a negative correction. I'm going to keep this as simple as possible so that we're not talking past each other and we don't become confused in concepts that have already been bastardized and lost in translation. So I'm going to speak specifically to my system and keep it simple. My system uses a combination of corrections and rewards. Now, to simplify that, we're going to call it, some people know the stick and the carrot, which means I have a motivating factor that may not be entirely pleasant. And then I have a carrot, which means here I have something that's nice that you might want. A lot of the stick and the carrot talk comes from old mule trainers. And the carrot being, here I've got a little bit of yum yum, something nice. Would you like to come over here and take this yum yum? Or do you want to be a stubborn mule and stand there, and then I can just put this stick into your rump and motivate you to move a certain direction or do a certain thing. So that's where stick and carrot comes from, is I can motivate you through something that you don't necessarily want to have happen to you, and then I have something that you might really want that might motivate you to do something of your own accord. This is pretty much the basis. And to address our inquiring account on this, I'm going to tell you now with certainty, I'm putting my marker down right here, and I will have the discussion with anyone out there. You cannot have a reward-only system. All these trainers who say, I'm a positive-only motivational trainer, you can't. You cannot have reliable behavior in a reward-only system, in what people call a positive-only system. It's not possible. You will never have a reliable, repeatable behavior based on only rewards. Cannot be done. And you're saying, that's wrong. Yes, you can. I'm going to prove that you can't. We'll start with children. I am a father. I have a child. She's 10 right now at the time of this video. If there was a reward-only system, and I've addressed this in other videos, and to Troster at Frequency Canine and some other people, they've heard me talk about this for years. Don't steal my idea, because then I'll have to sue you and put this video in as evidence. I have even thought about writing a book called If You Want Good Kids, Train Them Like a Dog. The parallels between behavior modification and getting repeatable, reliable behavior out of a dog and out of a kid are so similar, it is astonishing. And the reason why I've thought multiple times about writing a book and drawing these parallels and showing the relationship between the two. Many, many times I can tell my daughter, I've got a chore you need to do. I'm going to mow the yard. I need you to pick up all of the sticks that the wind has blown down, and I will give you $5 to do a good job. To a 10-year-old kid, $5 is a pretty good payoff. She should go through here and pick up every stick out there. I never saw $5 from a single chore that I ever did at her age. I know times change, I get it, but $5 is still a pretty good score if you're 10 years old. Point of fact, it wouldn't even matter at times if I gave her 10. There are times where she just doesn't feel like doing it, and the dollar amount, no matter what it becomes, will not motivate her. I could tell her, I'll give you $100 to pick up every stick in the yard to my satisfaction, and she'll still come up short and do a half-baked job even at the $100 mark. There's a point where rewards are no longer a motivational factor. And it's the same for kids as it can be for dogs. A, they may just not be motivated. They're just not feeling it today. Or B, they're satiated. In the context of the daughter and the monetary reward, there can just be a time where, I got a little bit of money saved up, and I've bought the things of interest that had my eye at Tractor Supply here lately. That's where my daughter spends a lot of her cash. I got the last 2 horse figurines that I wanted, and I got a couple lollipops and this other stuff, and I've got some money left over. Even at the $100 price point, I just don't feel like going out here and picking up sticks because I don't really need anything right now. I'm not motivated. I'm pretty satisfied and satiated. Or I'd rather be inside. It's kind of a hot, uncomfortable day, and I'd rather be inside watching one of my programs on TV instead of out here picking up sticks for dad. Either way, the reward-based system is not going to get it. Now we have to go to stick and carrot. Okay, baby girl, here's the deal. I'm going to give you $5 to do a good job. If you don't do a good job and I come back and have to get you out of the house to do it again, not only are you not going to get paid, I'm going to bust your butt, and you're going to go back out there and do it again to my satisfaction and get nothing for it. I am going to give you a physical correction to remind you that I am still in charge and this is my show, and there is a level of compliance that you are going to give me whether you want to or not. I'm going to offer you the reward-based option to go and do this, but there is going to be an enforcement mechanism should you choose not to do it or not do it well enough. And just like I'm going to demonstrate in the dog piece of this, I'm going to make sure that task, standard, and condition are all perfectly crystal clear. I'm not going to do a physical correction, not on my kid or on a dog, unless the task is clear and I know we have an understanding, and then we're going to have an enforceable standard. So I'm not talking about just random stuff. I'm talking about a known enforceable standard that I'm going to come back and enforce when you won't take the carrot. So with that being said, why do I say that there's no reward-only system? When you look at dogs, dogs have some of the same breakdowns at times. There are just days when they're not feeling it. There's days where they're a little bit off. There's days where they're in la-la land and they just want to be distracted by everything. And then there are times when they are fully satiated. And I have lived this. So during my time with the Department of State, which I've spoken about in other videos, using the State Department requirements for their dog program, they had a reward-only system, and they went from contractor-supplied dogs to government-furnished equipment where they bought and trained their own dogs in-house and then paired contract employees with these dogs and then sent them over to their location to work these dogs. The second iteration was even worse than the first. In the first iteration, you were allowed to put correction collars on your dog as long as the State Department didn't see it or know about it. And then you went to your week of certification and you had to be back on a flat leather collar, and you could pull up on them slightly, but you couldn't take their feet off of the ground, but you could lift up on the leash into the collar a little bit, or you could just kind of gently bounce the leash and pop them a little, but not a lot. But that was the limit to what you were able to apply correction-wise to the dog. Once they went to the government-furnished equipment style and it was all of their dogs in-house, it was a leather collar. You were not allowed to pick up or put any tension on that collar. You were not allowed to do anything that even smelled like, looked like, sounded like, or resembled or was a facsimile of a correction. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. I already knew that that was going to be massively problematic. They're sourcing Eastern Bloc dogs. Go back and look at my video on Eastern Bloc dogs and how to train them. These dogs had never bit jute or decoys. They might have had jute toys, but they weren't biting decoys. These were high prey, high possession, play, fight, tug for the toy, possess the toy dogs that had not been imprinted on bite work with a decoy or doing actual apprehension in a European style sport program. So the dog really had no basis for being taught to bite people. Keep that concept in your mind for a second. So I get my second dog, my first dog under the contract system, my Shepherd Tebow, was great. I was able to put a pinch collar on him. We played two toy and I might revisit that later in this discussion. We played 2-toy with a pinch and a 30-foot long line, and we very quickly remedied his understanding of who's in charge. And when I reward you with this prey item, we're going to play for a little bit and you get to possess it and have some fun time with it. But then when this guy says fun time's over, give it back, that means give it back. And we're going to have a system under which we fairly and ethically move into that process, and then you are going to give it back, period, end. So with that being said, I'm into my second dog, Miko. That's a government furnished equipment dog. In my class, I went back through with an AM canine handler who was a former Marine, and I was really fond of this guy. He was an excellent handler, a good all-around dude, and really very competent. I get paired with this dog, Miko. He gets another dog that I don't even remember the name of it. We are not allowed to do anything that resembles a correction. Every handler is issued 2 Kongs. These dogs have never been told no. They have no guardrails. There is no modification or guardrails put on their behavior. The only thing you are allowed to do is to hold the leash just to allow the dog not to be able to come to your other hand and take your hand off at the wrist. And you have to stand there and hold the toy or lay it on the ground and hold the dog back or pick the toy back up. But you cannot pop the dog, yank into the collar, lift their toes off the ground. You just have to basically stake this dog out and hold it and present the other toy in a way until the dog lets go of that one, wanting the other one. And then you hold the dog back and collect the first one and get them back into your reward pouch and then continue to the next rep. This Marine that was an AM canine handler, I thought I had it bad. He had it worse. Some of these dogs were so bad that the cadre at the facility in Winchester, Virginia, would give them a second toy pouch and they would cut up hot dogs. And now this guy had 2 Kongs and a bag of hot dogs on him. So when the second toy wasn't enough of a motivating factor to get him to give up the first toy, he would pull out a piece of a hot dog and get the dog to drop the Kong to get the hot dog while he restrained the dog with the leash, picked up the toy and put it back in. Now we get back to my example earlier. What happens when this dog has eaten half a pack of hot dogs and is satiated? We got to that point. So now this handler's out there on the floor trying to work his dog, and he pulls the Kong out, and this dog's sitting there. Nah, I'm good. This toy, got it, already holding it. It's in my molars. No thanks. Then he pulls out the hot dog. Woo! You know, that trick was great the first 10, 15, 20 times of the day. But you know what? I've eaten so much hot dog, bro, I couldn't take another bite. No thanks. And now the guy was standing there holding a hot dog and a Kong and trying to get this dog to voluntarily give this toy back because there was no enforcement mechanism and the dog had reached satiation. It was just a shutdown. It was gridlock. And some of these events were timed. Oh, by the way, the State Department and all of their genius also did not have a variable reward system. Every single find you made during training and certification was on a 1-to-1 reward basis, which means every find the dog gets a toy. And now you're on a timed event where you have to get this thing back, and they do not stop the timer because you're trying to get the reward toy back with a second reward in a reward-only system that they invented and subjected you to while the countdown timer is still going. Wrap your mind around that. So, as time went by and the dogs had no correction system whatsoever, no physical compulsion, there was nothing done to backstop the second reward as, oh, okay, you have a second reward, but if you don't take it, or you out the first one and you try to take the second one in an aggressive manner, there was nothing that you could do to try to make that behavior reliable. Over time, my dog Nico became more and more aggressive for the toys, and I was allowed no other management option to try to keep that in check. Move into 2020 during COVID, things go completely off the rails. I've been in country for over 6 months. I resign, and I'm telling leadership as I'm going months and months into 2020 with this dog, hey, it's getting aggressive. This dog's getting bad, because there is no in his world. There is no left and right limits. There are no hard barriers. This dog is seeing the toy pouch that I wear. The dog, I can only physically hold them back. And to a dog that was raised tied to a fence post, this puts the dog in a higher state of drive. So now I'm basically staking the dog out with the leash, trying to keep it from helping itself to a reward that I'm carrying on my person per their rules in this toy pouch. And I said, this dog is starting to nip at me. It's starting to bite at my hands. This is going to go downhill if I can't physically correct this dog. You're doing something wrong. You're an idiot. You're wrong. I leave country, and the kennel attendant that's in charge of taking care of these dogs, they start getting bit by these dogs. And bit for what? Pans of food. That's why it's on this table in relation to these items. Now these dogs are becoming aggressive in the kennel, and kennel attendants are getting bit for food. Trainers are trying to take this dog out and still work it and keep its training up. It's biting other trainers for food, and other people I worked with are emailing me, holy shit, dude, you're right. Your dog's going ape shit. It's biting the kennel hands. And the kennel hands were good. They were solid dudes. Don't get me wrong. They weren't doing anything to draw this behavior out. I just saw this whole thing coming. Other dogs start turning on their handlers, and things really start to snowball and get out of hand because the dog was never allowed to be told no. So there is no such thing as a reward-only system where the dog is going to be reliable and then also maintain some kind of composure and state of obedience, where they don't just start pushing the envelope and getting to a point where, okay, well, I know you've got these reward items on you. Now I'm just going to take them. I'm not interested in acting out on the working task that you're presenting to me. I'm just going to shortcut this entire arc and get straight to where the reward's at and take it, because I've never been told no, and there's no mechanism in place to stop me from doing otherwise. So let's get back to it. Another drink of water. The items that are on the table. When I get a new dog, just like I covered in how to pick a dog from a vendor, first thing I do is I am taking their actual food, and starting from day one at the hotel, I am feeding them from my hand. Things involved in the video, things every dog owner should know, part 1. On this table, in their world, I own all of this. Now we're going to get into that alpha subordinate relationship. If you're handling a working dog or a pet, you are in charge. You are the alpha. You own everything. You provide what they need to them. And when you provide something that is a reusable, you should be able to take that back. If you run up against something that may cause a reactive situation with your dog, a real world animal, a chicken, something of that nature, you should be able to get that behavior under control, get them back in balance, and get them obedient without them reacting to these real world prey items, chickens, squirrels, chipmunks, rabbits, so on and so forth. And you certainly should be able to apprehend a bad guy or a decoy in protective equipment and make them give that back. So starting from here, and let's work under the premise with my video from Eastern Bloc Dogs, a dog that is all drive, that is not a sport dog, that's never been told no, and has no guardrails. So with that in mind, even if I have a dog, which I have bought many before for the SOF MPC program that are fully titled dogs, KNPV, Schutzhund, IPO, etc. When I first get that dog, I am still starting from right here. I'm feeding them their consumable food for nutritional sustenance, taking it from my hand, teaching them hand obedience, hand respect. And as we go through this relationship, I'm going to tell you right now, if you think that you're going to get a new dog or become a handler of a dog and you want to go straight to here and have this dog on a bite and then just start working the out and making them give that away, if you can't go into your dog's kennel with this bowl of food and make them go into an obedient sit, stay, or down stay, and you wait and put that food on the ground and you hold that sit, stay, or down stay, and then you release them with what I do, which is just okay. Okay means now you can break obedience. It is a release. It's a release marker. You can come out of that sit, stay, down stay and now take that food and start eating it. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reach down there, give me that, and I'm going to take the food away while they're eating it and put them back into a sit, stay, or a down stay. I'm not going to be a jerk about it. I'm not going to play a bunch of silly, unnecessary games, but I promise you, I am going to be able to put that food down and make them wait until I give them a release from obedience. And I'm going to be able to pet them on the face, touch their body, and pat them on the side. If that dog is reactive and tries to bite me, resource guard, get aggressive, tries to bite me for taking that food away, if it's a working dog that I can't even open that gate with a pan of food without them jumping up and forcibly taking it, if you have that, and because all of these on this table are related, the reason I'm starting here and the food is represented in this video, if you can't put that food down and do exactly what I just described, you aren't going to be successful here. And to skip these other items on this table and jump straight to this, which I will illustrate as we go, handlers do over and over and over because they think this is where it's at. You're wrong. This is where it's at. This is where this begins. If you can't go in there, get that down stay, sit stay, present the food, make them wait, allow them to release from it, take the food, remove the food, go back into sit stay or down stay, give the food back, release with an okay, and it has to be with your release. How do I enforce that? I am going to use a pinch collar and a leash if I need to, but I am not going to let them come up and take that food until I release it. All of this, as you see, is going to build to right here. I'm already doing a control sequence for that certification day right here with this bowl of food. You might not see that connection straight away, but it's there. I'm going to go in here. If your dog won't sit, stay, down, stay long enough for you to put that food there and then sit there and watch it, just because the pan hit the ground, they are not allowed to stand up and take it. If you allow that dog to break obedience for this little bowl of food right here in a kennel setting, you are up shit's creek trying to make them sit there and mind you and maintain obedience when they're 3 feet from a decoy or 20 feet from a decoy and you want them to wait patiently. If you can't put that bowl of food on the ground and make them sit there and look at it until you say okay and release them, you're not ever going to have a prayer right here. So with that being said, some days I will go in there and I will set the bowl to the ground, and while my hand's over top of it, I'll say okay, and I will move my hand away and allow them to have it. Other days I will go in and put it on the ground and I will back up 2 steps and I may wait 30 seconds, I may wait 10 seconds, but I'm going to vary this. Why do we need to vary that? Because I want them taking all commands from here. I'm calling the shots. I don't want them learning the dance steps to this. I don't want it to be a strictly predictable routine where they think, okay, as soon as that bowl touches the ground, he says okay. So when that bowl hits the concrete and they hear it, they're already standing up and moving in. I didn't say okay. The bowl touching the ground is not your release. It is me verbalizing, okay, that's all going to build to right here. And if you can't do that, if you can't make that work, you're screwed up here. This to the next step is to here. And if you can't make what I'm telling you right now work right there, this isn't going to go anywhere else. So I start all of these consumables, reward items, all of my control sequence and outing starts from right here. If you can't reach down and take a bowl of food away from your dog, how are you going to get them to let go of a decoy in a full suit, which for most of these dogs, and I've even discussed in other videos, I will fully stipulate that this is a stair-step acclimation and drive for most working dogs with working dog levels of drive and aptitude. Your kibble food is at the bottom of the pile normally. Then you're going to have these can be interchangeable with some dogs. Some of them will be more focused and energetic and reactive to your toys. Some of them will be more so for the real world animals. Sometimes they're on the same level. But with that being said, once we start moving, up the stair steps here, if you can't make your dog maintain obedience as a squirrel bounds across the walkway at the park, how are you going to get them to start working your control sequence on your toys? If you can't get your dog to stop chasing a Kong that you threw, how are you going to get your dog to stop chasing a rabbit if you're working off leash? If you can't get your dog to stop chasing a rabbit, how are you going to get your dog to stop chasing a decoy? All of these things are absolutely related. So, with that being said, I get my dog obedient to the food. I can give it, I can take it away. We've got that marker, we've got that release. Now, if we're talking about the hypothetical of I'm working with an Eastern Bloc dog that knows nothing, the next place I'm going to go is to my clicker, and I'm going to start teaching that dog to let go of these toys. Don't worry if you're getting a title dog or a dog with some experience that has outing issues. I'm getting there. I realize that this is probably getting longer than you wanted to listen to anyway, or that I intended it to be, but here we are as the usual arrangement. So, with my Eastern Bloc dog, the first thing that I need to do, and I'm giving you strategies that are going to work long term, that you need to understand the why. I'm going to start with 2 toys, but I am going to get away from 2 toys as quickly as possible. Why is that? Convenience. I don't want to be carrying 2 toys my whole life. Actual obedience to the system. If you have to have 2 toys to get a toy back from your dog, do you actually have an out command? No, you don't. And do you want to know? Pay attention to the words I just used. I said out command. That's right. Command means I told you to do something and you will comply, and I have a system to get that compliance. So if you have to have 2 toys to get 1 toy back from your dog, you don't have a command. You have a 2-toy system where you kind of lure / use your dog's gluttony against their own instincts to try to get that first toy back. So, how am I going to work this? I got a dog that's all drive, huge prey, huge possession. I outlined this in my Eastern Bloc video. The dog gets a toy, boom, they grab it. Now I'm going to use my clicker to start marking that second toy being paid. The way I did it with my Eastern Bloc is I'm going to hop them up onto a place table. So I'm going to start with teaching them my reward-based system. I've got the dog on a pinch collar and a leash, and I've got a place table in my confined room. I'm going to lure the dog by showing them the toy over top of the place table. I've got my clicker and leash in the other hand. Once I lure them and they jump onto the place table, boom, I click that and I pay them with a reward for jumping onto the place table. Now I'm going to keep them on the place table. So I have given them a task that they can engage in, a behavior to get paid. I'm showing them a path. You can jump onto the place table. I will mark and pay that. Now I'm going to keep them there because they don't want to stay up there. They want to jump down and do other things. But through the leash, I'm going to keep them up there. And while dog has toy 1, I've still got my clicker and my leash, and now I've got toy 2. So the dog is going to want to jump down and take toy 2. Well, I'm not going to let him. I'm going to make that dog stay up there. And once the dog is up there and they release toy 1, I'm going to click that and relax tension on the leash and tell him, okay. And now we've released them from the table to grab toy number 2. As the dog goes for toy number 2, I'm picking up and pocketing toy number 1. And that's how we're going to work this thing in the beginning stages. We're going to have something they can engage in to get paid. They're going to get up there, and then they're going to be required to stay up there, and the gateway down to toy number 2 is going to be outing toy number 1. Over time, again, this is truncated because this piece is actually a separate video that I've covered before about how to mark and pay and name behaviors. And this is also a big piece of e-collar techniques past and present. I've got to teach them how to manipulate the world to their own advantage. So I'm giving them a way in and a way out. And then we're going to add consequences after the fact. Now, during this procedure, another reason that I need to get away from 2 toys is both to actually have a command, and secondly, because on this stair step of items, I'm going over here. I'm going to wind up right here eventually and need to have an out and a control sequence and some real world functional tactical obedience on this dog that involves giving up either a decoy or a real bad guy. And if I have to have a system, and because all of these items on the table are related, if my system requires 2 of these to get compliance, then I'm not always going to have 2 bad guys or a good equivalent to a second bad guy to tease this dog with to say, hey, please let go of bad guy number 1 so you can have bad guy number 2. So the thing that I'm going to do, and I'm going to work very quickly to get there as quickly as possible, is I want to be able to start to streamline my system and get from 2 toys to 1 toy. And I want to be able to tell that dog, show them, go to place, boom, they get on place. I mark that. I throw the dog the toy for being on place. Now that they're on place, I've started naming that out command. They let the toy go, and I click and mark that and let them down. Now I'm going to maintain them while I pick that toy up and reclaim it. This is a very nuanced piece that too many people overlook. Guys and gals get lazy. They don't want to bend over. They don't want, and especially with some of these real edgy high drive dogs, they don't want to lean down there and put their hand in harm's way that dog's going to break obedience and come over there and either bite their hand or chase their hand back to the pouch or to their pocket. So what you end up seeing is handlers that will get the out and then allow the dog to go pick the toy up again from the ground without putting themselves in the middle of that equation. So when that dog outs it, they're on the place table. I pay them. They've got it in their mouth. Then I tell them the out command, boom, and they drop it. And then they sit there a second, and before you tell them okay or whatever you're going to do, if you hit that clicker to mark, yes, I'm going to pay you again for successfully enacting on that behavior that I told you on that out command, but I don't intervene and make myself reclaiming that part of this process. And from the ground, the handler says, okay, and then the dog picks it up and then self-rewards again from the ground. Even though you think you hit the clicker and you got that out, you're setting yourself up for failure. Because now at this point, the dog has it in their mind that, well, I will let it go, and then the guy hits the clicker, which means I did the right thing and I get paid again. Now it's on my terms of how long I'm going to wait before I pick that back up again and reclaim it. As I'm going to discuss as we get deeper into this, there's no such thing as a reward bite. I will bang that drum until the day I quit breathing or the day that I leave dog training or dog work for good. There is no such thing as a reward bite. There are only the sequence of circumstances leading up to the point where the dog gets the bite, and the dog is going to see those circumstances leading up in sequence, and they are going to shortcut that sequence and make that, let's talk about it in terms of a roadway. Why do I need to go in the world of a dog? If I'm on a circular running track around a football field and you tell me I need to run all the way around this 400-meter loop and get back to the start-finish line, and then I get to run over there and grab that guy in the middle of the field, well, I might run that loop a couple of 3 times until I can go to center field and grab that guy in the protective bite equipment. But then what happens if I run and around one of the end zones? Well, maybe I go into the grass a little bit and I shorten that loop, and then I go to the other end zone and I shorten that loop, and I get back to the start-finish line and I grab the guy. Okay, that worked. Then on the 5th time and the 6th time, I'm thinking, I go around the first end of the loop, and then I'm looking across center field, and there's that guy, but there's no fence. There's nothing stopping me from being able to go right over there and grab that guy. Why do I need to make this whole loop around and go through this rigmarole to grab that guy? I've already been set on this path, and I've done the path a few times, but now I'm seeing gaps where I could maybe not have to go around this whole path, and I go over there and I get what I want. Dog turns in at midfield on half of a lap and goes and grabs it. Oh, well, if I can do it at half a lap, what if I do a quarter? Or what if I'm at the start-finish line and you tell me go, and I just run right over to the middle of the field and grab the dude to begin with and shorten this whole thing up? That's what they're doing. Every time you put a curve that you want a dog to run around and perform a sequence of events, if they can see a straight line and cut your curve out, that's what they're going to do. With that being said, the reward bite is the most misunderstood, misapplied. It's not even a concept. It's a fallacy. If you get your dog to out and then you think that there's going to be a reward bite and you're telling them, good boy, I'm letting you have that because you complied the first time, you're kidding yourself, because they don't intake information and process the information the same way we do. So with that being said, having your dog learn to out a toy and drop it on the ground, and you not becoming part of that process to make them hold obedience in a sit, stay, down, stay, and for you to take it away and be the person controlling that and then giving it back on your own timeline, if you can't do that, this is almost tantamount to a reward bite if you allow that dog to have the ability to re-engage and let that toy go and pick that toy back up without you being part of that process and being able to shorten that curve. And before you give them the release, or you were about to give them the release and they break and they grab it on their own, you're setting yourself up for failure right here. So this is an important piece. Be able to pick this toy up and take full possession of it, make them do a couple of other things, and then go ahead and pay them. I do not believe that you need to give these multiple payments over and over. I want to be able to pay for a task, give the out command, get a reliable out, pick that up and reclaim it, and make them do something else, and then pay them again on my own schedule. That's where you want to be. Next thing that I'm going to do with this, I'm going to start going out and having a sit, stay, down, stay, and I'm going to put this thing in motion. I'm going to engage prey and make them hold that sit, stay, down, stay. If you can't do it for this, you'll never do it for this on certification day or in a real world setting. We're trying to build that reliable behavior, that reliable out. So I am going to basically be able to perform an entire control sequence per your certifying official using a toy. If you can't do it with a toy, don't even waste your time and try to put a guy in a sleeve or a suit and go out there and set yourself up for failure, because that's all it's going to be, is failure. Keep doing it here. Same thing. I'm talking about this Eastern Bloc dog that knows nothing. If you get a title dog and you're the new handler, even if they know the control sequence, even if this is a PH1, PH2, ring sport dog, even if they know all the stuff, but you're new to them, if you can't do it with the food, if you can't do it with the toys, don't go out there and try to do it with your decoy. If the dog starts breaking through and getting successful bites and engagements and then not giving that engagement up when you tell them to, and you went straight to here, you've already given up so much ground that you've really set yourself up long-term for failures. So right here, I'm already working strategies that will set the dog up mentally here and here to give me compliance when I get to this level. So now we're going back to our e-collar techniques, past and present. I can put my e-collar on the dog. I can go ahead and start teaching my out command, and I can back that system up with my e-collar correction. Go back and look at my e-collar techniques, past and present. Low-level stem that leaves the mind open, that allows them to understand and process what that stimulation means and what I want out of it, and being able to manage that at a low level. The wheel of fortune, the I'd like to solve the puzzle. I've taught the dog, and I'm going back to the George Hickox methodology of I am 90% reliable without my e-collar in 4 different venues, 3 at a minimum. I can go to 3, 4 different places, get this dog to out without the use of an e-collar, and they know the word. And now I can start making that behavior predictable and reliable by using the e-collar stimulation to say, hey, when you hear that, there's potentially another reward out there, but there's also a correction. If you don't want to hear what I'm saying and give it up when I say it, I've got the power to be able to make you let that go. And I can ethically and knowledgeably correct you, because at 90% repeatable effectiveness in 4 different venues, I know you know what I'm saying. Worst thing in the world is to take a new dog you don't know, that may not even know the out command. Sure, it might have been a European import. This vendor might be telling you, yeah, this dog is titled. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I go back to previous videos where, hat tip to the Simpsons, and I say Quidgibo, and then you don't know what Quidgibo means, and I run up and I open hand slap you in the face. That's not going to work. You are immediately going to want to fight or break contact from the situation, and we're back to the George Hickox territory of the fight, flight, or fakery, and we don't want the dog doing that. We want them to be in a situation where they know the command, they know the consequences if they don't comply with the command, and that there is the carrot option, the reward option, if they choose to take it. So with that being said, I start working my e-collar here at this level, and most of you out there would agree and tell me, yeah, the dog is really drivey and has great toy drive, but my dog likes the decoy the most. That's correct. That's why I'm telling you, you start here at the food, then you move to the toy. Now you've set yourself up for success here. Even if you put your dog on an e-collar, if you don't do your e-collar imprintation the right way, if you don't get them used to understanding how to be controlled at low levels of input, and you go straight to here because you're in a hurry or you want to shortcut it, the first time you go on to this and you've got to max out an e-collar or hit them really hard, or the dog suddenly goes into a frame of mind where they blast through that input from the e-collar, that stimulation, and they stay on through that, now you're screwed. Now you're back into the George Hickox territory of, it's a case-hardened dog. They can fight through a collar. They can fight through a collar at maximum output. And now you've got that case-hardened dog. You've set yourself up for failure where you didn't need to because you were in a hurry. Start here. if you've got a title dog and you're not sure of their level of compliance with you yet, back up and set the stage here, then move to here. Now, we've got all of this down. I put the dog on the bite. We've got the bite. I want to remain calm. I want to give good, clear commands. Don't become the guys at training day at law enforcement agencies that I deal with who go in there with some ridiculous, "Suspects off body my dog, los." This is just some ridiculous word salad that just is one long run-on sentence that the dog can't make out. If you've watched European sport work, have a cadence. Make it clear. Break it up. Give time for that command to sink in, for the dog to come back to reality. If that dog is on a bite, come in there. Don't come in over the top. Don't make it stressful for the dog. "Suspect, stand still." I'm giving clear, real-world commands. Don't set yourself up to be in a real-world situation that winds up on video, and they present that in court and they say, "Your Honor, my client didn't know how to comply because you can't even make out what they're telling my client to do on the video." And if you come in there with that big, long, blurred, run-on sentence, they're going to have a case against you. You're going to have to present lawful, clear, audible commands that suspect can ingest and comply with. And that also is the same thing for your dog. Let them hear you giving that lawful command. "Stand still." Give it a 1-1000, 2-1000. "Stop fighting my dog." 1-1000, 2-1000. "Buffy." Let that sink in. Say their name. 1-1000, 2-1000. "Los." Out. Whatever. Poost. Whatever your command is, give them that out and give them that moment. Look for them to show some sign of compliance, that the grip begins to shift, that they start to let go a little bit. Now I'm going to come back with my verbal marker, "Fooey," and now they know I have marked that my correction is forthcoming, and I'm going to come in with that e-collar. So, for instance, if I'm talking about the Dogtra, I will have worked my out at the lowest possible setting. Let's say it's a 13 to 15 to 18, which is very low on the Dogtra. When I start working my out with my e-collar, I'm not going to come over the top and fry the dog. I need the brain functioning. I need the mind clear. I want the attitude balanced. So I'm going to come in, if I have been working between a 10 and a 20, I'm going to give them a little bit of a shock factor, a little bit of, "Hey, whoa, now that's over the top." I'm not going to 127. If I'm working at a 10 to 20, I'm going to come in at 25 to 30. It's not going to be over the top, and I don't want to shut them down mentally, but I don't want to start with that opportunity of the normal working levels of stimulation where they can fight through that, and then I start to build that callus on a dog where they can really start taking increasing levels. So when I'm doing this, again, also big point that is in my other videos, I have to limit the options. I cannot allow their disobedience to become learned success. So when I'm starting my first outing, training a new dog, I'm going to have my pinch collar on there, and I am going to have my e-collar on there and my 15-foot, maybe 30-foot long line, and I'm going to back up and give that dog some space, but I've got a wrap grip around my line, and I'm going to come in with that 35, "Los," and I hit that after my verbal correction. "Fooey, you've been notified, correction is imminent." Then I'm going to come in with that higher than normal level, but not in the atmosphere level. Going to hit that, and when I see that shock value and that mouth opens, boom, 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 I'm going to pop them back and use that long line to control their ability to re-engage. I want to wall off in their mind that they have an option to re-engage. Here are the pitfalls. If I don't go that extra step and have that long line on there with that pinch collar, suppose I do get their attention with 30 and they let go, and I tell them sit, and they rock back into that sit, and then they take it all in for a second and they say, wait a minute, I still want that guy. And they're able to physically jump back in there and reacquire that. Now we're back to where we got the out and they drop the toy on the ground, but then there's nothing between that and they get to pick it up and self-reward before we're ready. Now we're back into that territory. That's why I don't allow that to happen here, and I won't allow it to happen with the decoy. So we want that 30-footer on there. We want that pinch collar. Why a pinch? I'm referencing a pinch specifically because they can take too much pressure from a flat and they can sink down and let that choker chain draw down on them. That's not going to stop them. That pinch, even my hardest Eastern Bloc knot heads respect the power of that pinch. Pow, pow, pow. Pop that a couple of times, get them into that sit, keep them in that sit, and be ready to backstop that and not allow them to jump back up there and re-engage. Now I have successfully had that break in contact, and now I'm going to call them out of there. I'm going to bring that E-stem back down to the normal working level. If I broke that bite off and got my out with a 30, I'm going to come back to what they're used to. When I have worked this obedience sequence for the toys, I'm going to come back to that 15, and I'm going to start giving my steady stem and turn them a little bit because I want compliance. So I'm going to use that long line, hit my E, Buffy, here, and I'm going to give them that E and then turn them with that collar on the long line a little bit to give them the way out. I want to succeed. I'm not a barbarian. I am not correcting this dog. I'm not doing things that are punitive. I'm giving them that low level of working stimulation that leaves the mind open and clear, and I'm giving them a known command, the recall under E pressure, but I'm using that leash to not let them get back to the decoy and to give them the way out. I'm showing you how to get out of that correction and how to come back and get a reward to be specified later. So if I'm out there and I'm working my out, I've got my toy, 10 out of 10 would rather have that 30-footer, give them that 15 of stem, turn them a little and have them turn and see me and say, here, and I will hold that stem on there because just like we talked about with e-collar techniques past and present, you've got the stem on. Here's Daddy. Daddy's got a toy. I've got a reward for you. You can turn that stem off if you just come over here and let me pay you. And I will not only turn off that stem and let you control the outcome, I'm going to give you a toy in the process for doing it. Super duper simple. Turn. Hey, here it is. Run for the light, buddy. Come on. You come over here and you can have this. Now, on maybe the first one or two, I'm going to let them come over here and have it right away without that okay of releasing them to be able to teach them, hey, run right over to me. This is where your relief is at. This is where your reward is at. So with that being said, I'll do that one or two times, but that's not going to be the answer every single time. I'm going to, neighbors coming over to visit. I am going to set the precedent of run over here and grab the toy so that I can get that recall. But just like with the toy on the ground, I'm not going to make this the way going forward. You're not just going to run over here to me and grab this thing or expect it immediately. Now we're going to recall, maybe come into the heel or maybe a down stay. Then I'm going to pull it out and under control, present that. And then I'm going to say, okay. And then I'm going to let them to jump up and grab it, or I'm going to say, okay, as I'm dropping it, and then they're going to reward. But that's how I'm going to turn them around and bring them back. The reward bite is not a thing. If this dog is on the bite and you get the out and they go into a down sit, and then you say, good boy, or Stellan, or reattack, or the decoy is there, and then the handler says, okay, and then the decoy animates again, and we do an immediate rebite. That shit is not going to last. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Now you are cueing the dog that there is a sequence of events, and you're going to get this reattack. You're going to get to bite again. And too many people are calling this the reward bite. Well, you know, if he lets go and he does it for compliance, I'm going to let him have a reward bite where he gets it back. And now I'm showing the dog that there's this system of trust that if you let it go, then you can have it back. No, 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 no. Dogs don't process the world and information the way we do. If they learn, okay, I got the stimulation, I heard the command, I let go, and then there's a sequence of events of where I get to grab it right back, they are eventually going to see that curve in the road, and they're going to figure out the straight line. They're not going to wait for the decoy to do this and juke them again and let them have that reattack. They're not going to wait for you to say, okay, do you see how this picture's coming together? That's why we're back to the food, where they're not allowed to break that sit, stay, down, stay for the food until I say, okay, if you get them off of that bite, and now you are setting them up for a reward bite and you give them the release from here, you're going to see that same deterioration of performance that you will right here, because now they see that opportunity to cut across midfield and go ahead and grab that bite again without you saying, okay. They're not going to wait. Now, when we talk about a dog learning sequence of events, now you're on the street, the guy's got him for real, you're under camera surveillance, maybe you're on a body cam, maybe you brought the camera to the party. You give that dog the out command and you try to tell him to back up. If this was an off-leash engagement to begin with and you don't have that 30-footer in order to turn that dog around and make him come to you, and you get the out, maybe you do get the out and the guy's laying there whimpering and the dog goes, oh, I let it go, and now we've got this system of trust where I'm allowed to get it right back. And I gave it up, which means I get a new reward, which is the reward bite. So you're on camera, Buffy, los, and the dog loses, and the guy's laying there largely compliant and still, and then the dog just jumps back in there and grabs him again. How bad does that look on camera? Answer, terrible. You're going to have a loser in court if you do that. So I want to be able to have this dog to out, and there is nothing other than either staying right there. I will never let my dog rebite from this position immediately after the out, because I don't want guaranteed exact behaviors. Maybe I don't want the dog to recall to me right now, but I need a reliable sit, stay, down, stay without the reattack. I am never going to have this dog go straight into a reattack from right here in a training environment, because now they're learning it. If my dog is in a sit, stay, down, stay, real world, and something happens, I can go ahead and send him from there. And the dog already just had a real world engagement on this guy. If they stand up, which never happens, if they stand up and try to run, if this guy's already been shithoused by a dog, he's not going to wait until the out and then kick at your dog and then draw a reattack because he assaulted your dog. If this dude's already been bit that good and now he's somewhat surrounded and you call this dog to the out, again, from previous videos, I have called everyone I know, and I have not found anyone yet who has had a suspect who got bit and was, hey man, come on, get him off, help me, and then you out the dog and then he goes, yeah, this is my chance, and he kicks or swats at the dog again. Hasn't happened. If it did, I am sure the dog will react, or I can give the dog the release to re-engage on that subject if needed. Don't train that in with a guy in the suit, because then you're going to get that during your street engagement. So with my outs, start here, go to here, get compliance here. Now once you're on with your decoy, use your e-collar on commands that they know. What do we do with a dog that's got problems? How do we fix problems? I'll give you, first of all, let's talk about triaging problems. If you are a retread handler or you got this dog and maybe you skip steps, ways to know that you have a problem. If you've got a decoy out there and your dog runs in and grabs this dog and bites him nice and firm and committed, and he's engaged with this guy and things are going well, and then either from a distance or you close in, if the dog starts to track you with their eyes as you come in, this could be a sign. Not a guarantee, but could be a sign. If your dog is focused on the decoy and is driving into him, maybe wrapped, maybe showing some good commitment to the decoy, and they're pushing straight on, if you start with stand still, stop fighting my dog, or get to the dog's name, and all of a sudden they go from to and they start turning, if they were driving straight on to the decoy and you start with your verbals that are leading toward an out, and this dog starts to spin away and cut their eyes, you've got a problem. This is a guaranteed sign that now this dog is conflicted. Once their demeanor changes and they start trying to spin the decoy or spin around the decoy, or they're trying to look for you, or they start to bite harder, this is all signs that they've had bad conflicted communication, that there's a problem with the out, and you're going to need to do some serious work to reset this. Most often when you see that, the out has been handled so poorly, you think you're going up here and you're telling this dog out. When you go up there because of things that have happened up to this point, when you say let go, they don't hear let go. They hear time to fight, especially when they have a major change in their demeanor and it's observable. So if they're on this bite nice and confident and they begin to make new sounds, different sounds, whining sounds, spinning away, if they become more ferocious, if they bite harder, if they're on there and they're biting, competently with strength, but then you say, Buffy, Los, and it reaches a new level of rage, this is now them upping the energy to try to fight letting go because they've had some really bad experiences. I tell people that this is tantamount to somebody ringing the bell for two boxers to start fighting. They're already in here biting, and then when you say Los, it's ding ding. Not only are you fighting this guy, now I'm getting ready to come in here and we're going to fight, and you're going to struggle even harder to hold on to our decoy or our bad guy because you've already had such bad input and bad information prior to this. If that is your situation, first order of business, come up with a brand new word. Take the decoy away, decoy out of it, come back over here. We don't need the wild animals, but we do need the food and the toys. Let's come back over here and start with our control and our marker releases from obedience with our okay or yes or whatever you want to do. Start here, come to the toys, get a new word for letting the toy go. Little sidebar here, it is very uncommon that I run across somebody who says, I've got problems outing off of a decoy, but I don't have problems outing off of a toy. That's pretty rare. If you have a dog that will routinely and regularly give up the toy, you should be able to translate that into this arena. It's pretty rare. It's almost unheard of because, again, we've already stipulated that this is pretty much a stair step in the world of desire, of drive for the dogs. I have yet to see a case, and I'm not saying it's impossible, where the handler has a good out off of a decoy and then taking the toy from a dog is a shit show. Before I wander too far away from that, I just want to say right now, I reference a pinch collar very, very often, which is one of my go-to pieces of training equipment. Over the years, and I started with my first initial class and training all the way back in '99. And this is integral to getting your out. People using a choke chain and taking the airway from a dog in order to get the out. Know this, after 25 years, if you are taking the airway away from a dog, realize you're doing that because now this is a more exigent, emergency style out that you are physically taking this dog off strong in drive. If you are working this system with a choke chain and you're relying on taking an airway from here, I have seen guys try to train the out and they've got the dog on live ring choker and the dog's holding the toy and they move the chain up and then they lift and the airway goes away and the dog loses air and you're standing there saying, los, aus, boost, whatever. And the airway is gone and then the dog's mouth opens and the toy drops and you back away and set him down. People think, mistakenly by the way, that through the use of the choke chain, I have developed an out and my dog knows what the out word that I am using in conjunction with this choke chain means. Not so fast. Sometimes they might, but overall they don't. I don't like seeing, and it's not that, don't get me wrong, don't get this twisted. I don't mind taking a dog's airway in certain types and times and situations, both in training and real world execution, and there is a time and a place for that. But as far as me holding the George Hickok standard of, does the dog know the word? Are they 90% compliant with the command and in multiple venues? When I'm holding up on that choke chain and the dog's losing air, sometimes, and I've seen it in their eyes, they're not really fully aware of their surroundings. I am not convinced that they're processing information as effectively as they are with an open, maintained airway. But if you are holding your dog on that choker chain and saying los, and eventually the toy flops out of there and you give the airway back and you collect the toy, I would not use that as feedback to you, to your trainer, that my dog knows out because they gave that up under restricted airway. Then you go over here and the dog's on and you're saying los and the dog's not letting go and you're saying, well, I got a disobedient dog. I disagree. If you are just seeing them drop that toy, or you come up here on live ring and you're saying los, and you're holding pressure on the live ring, taking away the airway, and then the dog eventually lets go and you back up and you set them down, you and I can have that discussion. You will never convince me that under the George Hickok's methodology that this is a knowing ethical correction. Again, I'm not against it, but I'm saying at this point, I'm not convinced that we are transmitting information to the dog that I know for a fact you know what to do with that. In the model where we talked about e-collar techniques past and present, and I can get you on that place table and I can pay you, and then I can tell you an out command and you will drop that toy, and I can mark that with a clicker and give you another toy to get down, and that's 90% repeatable in 3 to 4 venues. I know for a fact you know what that word means. If you're doing it and it's always under a restricted airway, and then the dog either eventually just drops the toy or falls off of the decoy because of restricted air, this is not a command or a situation with this dog that I'm comfortable with coming in and introducing an e-collar, trying to burn this dog down to get them to comply with a command that I already question that they 100% understand. So I want to make that clear. I'm not against using that airway restriction, but we don't want to assume under those circumstances that this dog knows what I'm talking about when I'm saying it, and they're not just tapping out UFC style that, okay, I've lost enough air that I'm just losing my grip. I'm starting to fade out a little bit and I lose a little bit of muscle control of the mouth, and maybe even just trying to gasp for air I have now outed this toy or outed a decoy, but now someone's going to assume that I know what that word means, and we can move into other areas of correction for that. So that is how I train the out. I have a very, very good track record on getting obedience to my food, outs with the toys, outs both in training arenas and in real world engagements. And one other last tip, when I talked about the dance steps and the predictable sequence, the reason that I change my presentation with the food, I change the interval with which I release them to take the food either quickly or waiting, and day in and day out when I feed, I change that sequence of events. If you are training for your certification, do not use your control sequence elements in the same order every single time. I've covered this in other videos. Keep the dog guessing. Make sure that in your system of corrections and rewards, that this is what they're listening to. This is also an element of my video, The Ultimate Tactical Exercise Maybe. I want them taking all commands from here. Don't see things around you. Don't see events taking place in an order that you're used to, and then start anticipating and guessing where this ends up, and then cutting across midfield and straightening out that curve to just go get what you want because you think you know how this is going to play, and I'm just going to run over there and grab that guy or that toy because I see all of these dance steps that are repeatable and routine coming back around. Your evaluator may have an exact sequence in which they want you to do it. That's fine. Compartmentalize that training, break it into individual sports drills, do your call off. One of your best things to get here is to be able to throw this toy and send the dog on a retrieve while this thing is still bouncing along in motion. If you can get that down stay from there with this thing in motion, you're going to be doing great over here. To be able to stop a dog with that prey engaged, a visual target that's in motion, and they will still go to the down stay and then bring them back, always bring them back. Don't just go from the call off of either in motion or seeing it and stopping them halfway or 3/4 of the way and then sending them from there. Oh, he stopped, so I'm going to give him the reward bite from mid pursuit. We're going back into that same degrading loop. I stop, I go down, I wait, they release me, and now we go from that to, well, he kind of waited till I was going to release him, to I don't even do a down stay anymore. I do a touch and go. They send me at midway. I drop and let my elbows touch the ground, and then I stand straight up and I go and I grab the decoy. To maybe at midfield, I'll slow down and do an elbow break and not even touch my belly to the ground. That routine, that predictable sequence of events is how they start going straight from A to B. So break it up. On your down stays, sometimes move your feet a little and don't be lazy. Go down there and move that dog into a heel and heel away. But if you compartmentalize and train all of your control element sequences and do all of your real world type of scenario based training on your training days, remembering that and keeping it in mind and not setting these patterns and sequences, your certification day is going to go great. 12 months at a time, if you go back to certification and you repeat that same sequence of events, but George Hickok style, you have 90% effectiveness in rotating venues of switching those elements up throughout the year. These little gates 12 months apart are not going to be a deal breaker. You're going to have a good, reliable control sequence as long as you're not feeding them that same loop over and over all year long. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it answers questions. It probably wasn't what you thought you were going to see when you started this, but that's how this works. These are all interrelated pieces that you have to understand. Years ago at 7th Group, we adopted a dog out to an Air Force kennel, and I told him how to do it. I said, this is how you're going to pass your cert. This is how you get your out. go run PT with this dog, go run 3 to 5 miles, go play toy, throw the toy, do a full control sequence with a toy, get his brain dialed in, and then go out there and don't just walk out on the OB yard with a guy in a bite sleeve and think that he's going to out or listen to you whatsoever. Put in some footwork, do the exercise, make sure the Malinois, when they come out of the kennel in the morning, or even high drive shepherds, the gas hand is above full. We're at a range of energy that is not usable. We're in a mindset that is not shapeable. Go run, and I don't mean make them chase toy. Go put in 3, 5, 6 miles of pounding the ground. Get that gas hand down below full, but above 3/4 of a tank. Then go do some warm-up exercises, some OB control for a toy, and be down there at 3/4, 7/8 of a tank. Then bring your decoy out or go into your tactical training with them not above full on the gauge, because it's never going to go well. Engage the body, engage the mind, set the expectation, then go do your training. These guys couldn't get this dog certified. Well, you can't get him to do it. They brought him back to me at the home kennel, the 7th group kennel. I took this dog out, let him have a big long potty break. I went right out on the OB yard and started warming up with the toys. And then in front of them and their kennel master, I put a guy in a sleeve. I went right out there, and without ever putting a leash on this dog, we did an entire control sequence, boom, right in front of them. And I said, I told you, that's all you got to do. You can't be lazy. You can't jump straight to here. You have to put the work in here. You have to get them out, do the PT, do the leg work, then reap the success. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I haven't even looked at the time. I know this thing was super long. If this did not answer questions, or you have more information somehow where I glossed over something or didn't hit the mark, the best way is to DM me on Instagram, P2TK9. Otherwise, put it in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. See you on the next one.